Hello, my favorite heroes. This here is video 2 in your 3-part mini-series of how to co-parent like a superhero. And today I want to talk about a very important superpower that needs to be developed if you want to be the superhero in this co-parenting journey. And that is the superpower of not saying bad, mean, degrading things about your ex in front of your children, or even worse, to your children. And I know we kind of probably all know that in theory. You're told that when you go through a divorce, if you have to take those parenting classes like we all have to do, it's really important that you protect your child's relationship with their other parent. But what I want to talk about is kind of why that's so important, because it was probably one of mine, and I will say my ex's highest values in our co-parenting story is that we made a commitment not to disrespect each other to our children. And I believe this was critical to my children being able to adapt and recover and still have a sense of wholeness and safety and security. And the best way I can get in touch with why that is so important is pulling from my own story of growing up and having two parents who really disliked each other. It was palpable, and they didn't get divorced until I was 17 or until I graduated high school. But I remember so clearly the feeling and how damaging and devastating it is to have one parent express their hatred of the other parent to me. And it's kind of like as a child, even if you know the one parent is right, even if you know when you hear your mom say your dad is a selfish jerk who is dishonest with money or whatever it is, even if you know that she's right, it still causes a great deal of distress to hear someone talk about your parent that way, even if it's true. It's as if they are ripping a piece out of you when you're a child, because you're still so closely identified with both your parents. As a child, you're still forming your own identity. And so you're still pulling from parts of your dad and parts of your mom, and you're connected to these people, whether or not they were good parents. And whether or not you even had a healthy relationship, you're still deeply connected to this parent. So when someone tears at the parent, your parent, it's like they're tearing at you. That's what it feels like. It's kind of that funny thing, like if you have siblings, and you can be as mean to your siblings as you want. You can say all these nasty, horrible things. But the second you hear someone else do it, you're like, I'll kick your ass. You don't talk about my brother that way. It's that family loyalty. But so often parents do that to their children by bad-mouthing their ex-partner. And they don't realize how devastating that is to a child, to literally feel like they're being torn down the middle. Like, kids already carry so much weight of responsibility when two parents are divorced, because they start to worry about each parent, and they all kids want is for peace, right? To bring the family back together. And so they're already distressed by the breakup. Obviously, divorce is traumatic for children. And our goal here as superheroes is to try to make this less traumatic than it has to be. And this is one of the number one ways you can be a hero to your child, because, and it doesn't matter how your ex-spouse talks about you. Just know that if your ex-spouse is bad-mouthing you, and you still take the superhero route, and you put on your cape and you decide, I'm taking the higher road here, I am not going to do this to my child. This is not about your ex-partner. This is about your child. You're not going to do this to your child. You're not going to hurt your child by saying horrible things about their father or their mother to them. Your child will, they may not know it now, but they will have a deep, deep respect for you. And they will feel so much safer with you than they do with the other parent. It's just, I know it. I've lived both sides of it. And I know that it's true. And I know that was crucial for my children, that they didn't hear their dad and I say mean things about each other to our kids. And it's, we're not aiming for perfection here. I mean, obviously, even when you're still married, you're going to have those, oh, your dad, like eye roll moments, like he always blah, 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 blah. But if you make an intentional effort as a co-parent to not express your dislike or maybe even hatred for your ex-partner to your children, you are doing one of the most noble and one of the best things for your kids you could possibly do. And I want to stretch you even further, and this may feel really uncomfortable and you may not like it, but find any opportunity you can to honor the other parent. Even if they were a horrible spouse, you had a horrible marriage, they were a horrible husband or wife, you can find something to say to your child about their parent, because what you're doing is you're building the child up by building their parent up. Like, your dad was always so funny, blah, 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 blah. And he was always so good at wrapping Christmas presents. I mean, small stuff, but for a kid to hear you say something nice about their parent, it does something really life-giving to the inner work of a child. We want people to like our parents, right? We feel shame on our parents' behalf. We feel proud on our parents' behalf. So if we are at home, if my child's in my home, it's my turn for custody, and this is a place where there's so much conflict, and I'm just walking around spewing hatred about their dad, or they bring up their dad and I'm, instantly angry and don't talk to me about him, your dad, I know that's extreme, but I know it happens. If I'm a child and that's my home environment, it really is verbally and emotionally abusive to a child, I believe, for someone to attack their parents nonstop. It's so confusing for a kid, and it's such a vulnerable, unsafe place to be. And I'm not saying we don't get to have those feelings of dislike or hatred or disappointment or anger. I am saying we don't process that in front of our kids, or worse, to our kids. We don't use our kids as an outlet to, and I think it can get twisted. We can kind of think we're wanting to prepare our kids, or well, my kid, needs to really, their dad really is an asshole and he really needs to know how to deal with that. Like, we don't get to define our child's parent for them. They need to be allowed to make their own definition about their parent. Your ex may have been a horrible husband, but he may not be a horrible father. And we can separate those two things, right? Because again, the superhero power that you're utilizing here is not for your ex-spouse. It's for your kid. And I know that you love your kids more than you hate your ex. And that's the bigger picture here. And you can have your anger and your dislike and your feelings about your ex, but just know that those are yours. That's your story with your ex-spouse. That's not your child's story with your ex-spouse. Your child and your ex have their own separate relationship that has nothing to do with you. And you don't need to define that for them. My ex